Good Monday morning. I hope you are all doing great. And today we are going to proceed from where we stopped. If you haven't been able to post journals, please make sure you make a point of posting them on the application before you go to this step, because it will really help you to understand this step. Please go back if you haven't. And today we are going to proceed to do the same. We are going to post using AL code. And I have created a processing only report. um, you can have a processing only report which doesn't have a display of any layout. It will just process and finish the processing, and then it will display for you the output for the result. Or it will mostly used when you need to query data items. If you want to query maybe the customer table or the vendor table during your processing, the best is to use a processing only report, and it can really help you to put in filters. If you want to specify filters, you use a processing only report. It's heavily used in Business Central. With many processes, they utilize the processing only report, many processes in the application, and that is what we have created today.
Hii ni Tech na Msangi ya jishinde.com.
This is a processing only report. I have called it process annual transactions. Oh, my spelling. Annual transactions. And we have said the application area is all. To enable it, we want to see it in all the areas of the application. And then we need a filter for the customer if we want to process for one customer. And again, now we have all these. Okay, we have request filter fields to number. We have and then we have a trigger for on after get record. We have a request page that we will use for opening the, like, setting the filters, which will be, we can initiate the default values in the on init trigger. But again, if you are not conversant with these report triggers, go to the report series. I covered the report triggers deeply, and you can just watch the report triggers video. It will help you if you are not conversant with the triggers. So I have defined several variables here that we'll use. We'll have an expense GL account, an income GL account, a tax GL account, and a payment GL account. So the GL accounts that we were using on the other side of the posting the journals, we will now specify them on the request page. When the user populates, or when the user clicks on the request page, they will be triggered to filter, and they will enter these particular GL accounts to enable us key in that particular information. So that's the introduction. And now the other thing that I've done is I have a table extension for the user setup. So we want to specify the batch and the template for the particular user who will post transactions. So if we look at this user and the user setup, we have specified the template and the batch that the user will post transaction using. So we have general and the batch is Msangi. So if you have maybe 10 users, you need to set up, to extend this user setup table, or you create a new table for setup that will enable you to specify the batches that the user will be using to post in the system. This will enable you to make it easier for processing transactions will be easier, and there won't be a conflict. As we had stated earlier, you need to use different batches for each particular user. So once that has been done, the next thing that we need to do now is to go to the posting part of this transaction. We have a request page. I can now probably display this the way it is as at now. This page, before we do anything, this is how it looks like. Process annual payments. When you click on it, it populates this processing only report with a filter where you can filter the customer number, and then with options to specify these GL accounts. We need to give the user the permission to specify the expense GL account, the fees income, the tax GL account, and the payment GL account, so that the user can have the power, so that they can, if in case this GL changes, if you should not hard code, the user will be able to change it at any point. If in case this GL changes, the user will change it, the tax and this one and this customer number. If they want to process for one customer, we can be able to do exactly that. So how do you go about creating journals? Remember, on the other video, we did an insert to a journal line. Like we inserted, you do postings in a journal by inserting to the journal line. That is simply the concept. So we need to specify a record of general journal line. So this record will be able to give us the journal line, and so this journal line will be able to use it to post journal lines. This record is happening here. I'm having double entries. And another record, the journal line uses a line number that is an integer. So it uses a line number that is an integer, so we'll call it line number. That is the primary key of this journal line. Remember, we said that this journal line is a buffer, and it uses the line number as an integer. So when we said on after get record will display the record of each customer. For instance, if we message the number here, it will populate all the customers that are in the system one by one, because it is listing them on after get record, meaning it is processing for customer 1 based on the sort that you have specified under your sorting. But for now, we don't have any sorting or whatsoever. We only have processing. We want to do some code here on after get record. So what do we need to do here? We have a journal line that requires a line number to be unique every other time. So we just increment it by 1 for every journal transaction. So it means that it will make it unique. Okay. The other thing now that we need to do is to make sure that all the values of the GLs have been keyed in by the user. So at what point should we do that? At what point should we make sure that the user has entered every value that they're supposed to do? Okay, at the onInit trigger, that's not the best place to put, because on init trigger we are just initializing the variables. So we need to specify that on after, on pre-report. That is before we load the data items. We can now specify that, or confirm, has the user keyed in all the details, because on pre-report is after the onInit. That is okay, it is run before you process the data item. So our trigger on pre-report should be somewhere here outside the dataset. Trigger on pre-report, not on post-report. And it's making it easier for us. We want to make sure that everything here has been keyed in. So we'll just specify a label that will say, I'll say, okay, required, let me say value required, required error, and then it's a label of saying that please enter the field. So we will reuse this particular label for and key in the different GLs that are supposed to be keyed in. So if expense GL account is blank, then we throw an error that says please string substring now that will have a required required error, and we will say now the expense GL account. So if it's blank, then it's required. So you can just use it in one line to enable us have as many as possible. So okay, expense GL account field, there is no need of a comma here. And then we have fees income, we have tax GL, and then we have the payment. So we'll have fees income, and then tax GL account, then we have the payment GL account to make sure that everything has been entered, and then here we'll change it to fees income, then tax, then payment. If the user has some predefined GL accounts, you can help the user make their work easier by having them on init report. You can help the user by keying in all the GLs, like you can say the expense GL account is equals to this, but they have the ability to change. This is making their work easier, especially if these GLs are not changing as often. Okay, now that we have this catered for, the other thing that we need, remember I've just shown you that we have our template specified in the user setup table. We need to be able to fetch that particular template that we have just set in the user setup table. So we need to fetch from the user setup and make sure that that template exists. So we need to get, come on. So we'll say, first of all, the user should be set up in the user setup. You just use the get. If it doesn't get a value, it will throw an error. This particular user who is running the transaction must be set up. So, and then we'll just test field, journal template name, and then journal batch name. That's enough. It will tell us if the user has been the batch name and the template name for this particular user has been set up. Okay. Once that is done, we are ready to go to on after get record. We have our gen journal line here defined, and we have our line number here defined. So what else should we do on the report? We have made sure that this journal template name and batch name has been set up. It means this batch has already been created in the system. So we just need to make sure that the journal line for this particular batch doesn't have any value. While you are posting, remember this is a buffer. We want to create a new buffer. We cannot create a buffer when we have values under this batch of the user. We need to make sure that there is no value in that particular batch. So how do we go about it? We say we need to just fetch to reset to make sure that there is no value. We'll use the template name as the user setup dot journal template name, and the batch name we'll set it as the user setup dot journal batch name. So if there is any value under this particular filter where the batch name is the one that has been set on this and the template is the one that has been keyed in on the other side, then we just need to delete everything. This operation, even if you're not doing it in a report, make sure that you make sure the buffer is empty before you start processing. You can do it even if it's a code unit. Before processing, you make sure that there is nothing in that particular journal. And again, don't just delete even if there is no value. Just make sure if there is a value, then you delete, because a delete operation takes time in the system. So you don't need to waste a lot of system resources just deleting something that is not existing in the system. Once that is done, once the setup has been done, we can easily go now to our on off target record and start keying in that particular operation. So I think to avoid this video being so long, I will maybe give you a chance to do exactly that, so that we can now move to the next video with a clean slate of just creating the journal lines. Because what we have done is, you should go and make sure that you have all your setups with the fields specified under global variables. All the fields should be specified, and the fields here, remember, you set them on the request page, and where on the request page we have a table relation of GL account where direct posting is true, because if direct posting is false, you cannot be able to post to that particular GL account. We are trying to minimize errors from the word go. So if you just allow the user to enter any particular GL account, it won't allow them to post directly to the GL account. There are some GL accounts that should go through the receivables account or through the subledgers. Maybe the bank ledger, GLs for bank account ledger entry or vendor ledger entry. But for this GL, we need direct posting enabled. If it's not enabled, then this is not our GL. This is not what we want. And you can be able to set it not here under the variable. The variable, you set it without that particular condition, but on the request page you can be able to set a table relation for the GL account, or for whichever value that you need to use on the filters, you can set a table relation to specify that. And again, we went and go on and create a table extension for the user setup, so that you can be able to specify the journal template name and the batch name. So in the user setup, what I've done is there is an extension for the journal template name, that the relation is journal template name dot name, because this one has more than one primary key. Okay, but the name is the default primary key. So you have the general template dot name. Okay, this one has only one primary key, I believe so. Okay, this is the one with two primary keys. So you need now to specify the general batch dot name, where the template is equal to the one that has been selected here under the general template. So it will filter this particular batch to the template that you have selected. If you have selected assets, it will give you assets that have batches that have been created under the assets. This is another important step that you should create under your user setup. And again, the other important step is now okay, this is not so important. This is the last step, is to create a page extension to enable you to process annual payments under your customer, so that on the customer list you can now just click on that report and process. So that's it for this video, and I believe you should reach here in terms of creating the code. But this video I'll release it immediately. They will follow it each other closely, so that you can be able to follow this, finish this, and proceed to the next instantaneously. So I think that's it for this video. I will see you in the next video. May God bless you.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so that you don't miss the next one.